So this week is probably going to be the most awkward and maybe difficult sermon we're going to have to walk our way through, just because of the context and the content of what it is. And so let's open up in a word of prayer before I get going into that. God, we do love you, and we ask for your hand of blessing and your guidance here on our sermon this morning. I ask that you would speak through me and speak through your word. And God, help us to all be able to look at these passages and what Solomon here explains to his son. And Lord, that we'll be able to take it and apply it to our own lives, no matter what stage of life we happen to be in. God, we do love you, and we thank you for all that you do. In Jesus' name, amen. So, money in exchange for sexual sins are one of the earliest known and longest lasting occupations in history. Its first mention was the temple prostitution in Samaria. Actually, written recording of how they practiced their religion. And over the last 100 years, the format has changed with the invention of publications and the internet. And just to give you a statistic, but some predict that pornography brings in more money than other major entertainment industries. And so the idea behind it, I know it's not the best, but low estimate is that it brings in $6 billion. Middle estimate is that it brings in $15 billion, and there's even higher estimates. The NFL brings in $14 billion. That gives you a comparison. So it hasn't gone away. It's just changed its look. The industries are primarily built, but not limited to attacking the inability of men to control themselves and their desires. And as you know, these kinds of sins are not just limited to pornography and prostitution, but also to that of adulterous relationships. These types of sins, sexual sins, have created wars. They have ruined families. They have ruined churches. They ruin politicians' campaigns. They used to. They ruin people. And King Solomon, the primary writer of Proverbs, thousands of years ago recognized the dangers to sexual sins, and throughout a few chapters addressed major areas of concern for his son and future sons and leaders of Israel. Now, there are three passages that I'm going to focus on, I'm going to attempt to address in Solomon's explanation. Now, as a reminder, this sermon cannot, and there's no way this can be exhaustive in its content. And I'm not going to spend weeks and weeks and weeks on this topic alone. Yeah. I cannot also be incredibly graphic to the mixed ages, and so understand that. And I'll explain more at the conclusion of the sermon, but I would really encourage you to do a careful reading of these passages, and I'm going to challenge you to do it from another perspective as well. So you'll be able to formulate your own thoughts on this. Now, another note to remember is that these verses are written to a writer's son. And so as a result, the dangerous person in this passage is described as a woman. In no way does this passage define women or declare that they are all dangerous. We know this by how he defines wisdom as a woman as well. In the street begging with people to turn to the Lord. And we talked about that a good chunk of weeks ago. And so it is just primarily for a man in his position, the danger was another woman. Now, personally, I struggled with this portion of Proverbs for a few reasons. The first one is I am a male, and like many males throughout history and this church, have battled against sins of this nature and will continue to battle against sexual sins until the day I die. Second, I find this challenge written from Solomon a little ironic and also hypocritical. Because in my opinion, he succumbed to the temptations that he was warning people against. He had an army of wives and concubines. And if you want to see that, you can check out 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. And the Bible explains it very clearly that he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. So he got around this just by marrying every single woman he could. Yeah. And the Bible didn't look too highly on it, okay? So there's no like, yay, Solomon. No, the Bible does not hide. So, and with that, as I'm reading this, I'm like, man, you're saying this, yet here you are doing it. But what we can rest in, and what we realize as sinners who need to be saved by the grace of God, Solomon was no different. And Solomon sinned and blew it. But his word and the word of God that was inspired and written by the Holy Spirit is perfect and is not dependent upon the character of a man, but it depends on the character of our God, which is perfect, so we can trust it. But that's why it makes this a little challenging. And so with all this in mind, I'm going to start us on a little journey. And what we're going to see, and what really like sort of leaped out of the pages of me, this isn't going to be a how-to sermon. But as I was reading this, what leaped out at me is the lies that you are forced to believe and the lies that you choose to accept when you decide to pursue a relationship outside of how God has designed it to be. And so we're going to try to, like I said, we're going to skim through these passages and really bring out these lies that you're forced to accept. So if you start with me at Proverbs chapter 5. Right, we're going to see this first lie here. He says, my son, verse 1, be attentive to my wisdom, incline your ear to my understanding, that you may keep discretion and your lips may guard knowledge. For the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is as bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps follow the path to Sheol. So this first point here, this first lie that we choose to believe by pursuing a relationship outside of what is biblically allowed is that your current needs, okay? What you believe is a need that is just this incredibly important thing in your life, and you have to do it, are more important than your life. Did you see what he said? He's like, the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey. Honey tastes really good, right? How many of you guys literally would when your mom wasn't looking, put as much honey as you possibly could on a spoon? Maybe you skipped the spoon. Okay? Yeah, it is really good. It's like sweet, but not too sweet. But you just eat it. And so here it is, this forbidden woman drips with honey. And so you're like, man, this tastes good. This is great. Her speech is smoother than oil. Man, she knows just what to say, when to say it. But look what it says in the verse 4. Her end is as bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. And if you've ever gotten a shot, shots are terrible. Sword wounds are even worse. So make no mistake, what you think you need right now is a lie. And we buy into it, and it's a lie, and we believe that it is more important than our life. But the writer here is like, no, it's not. Because if you follow that path, you'll end up going down to death, following this individual to Sheol, which is the grave, death. Whew. And so the first lie we buy here that he brings out here is that our needs are more important than our life. Because in the long run, most people, if they follow this, will not say, that was worth it. That was worth destroying my marriage over, ruining my church. It was worth ruining my political campaign. That was just awesome. They don't say it. Every one of them is like, I regret it. Because in that moment, they thought their needs at that moment were more important than the course and direction of their life. That's the first lie we see here. Now let's skip ahead here to Proverbs chapter 6. It says right after that abomination passage that we preached on. And so he goes again, he readdresses it again, but this time from a different angle, okay? And it's in verse 23 of chapter 6. It says, for the commandment is a lamp and the teaching a light, and the proofs of discipline are the way of life. And so he's really trying to say, hey, listen to the commands of what I'm giving you. They are like a light, a lamppost in a dark street. You know where you are based on these commands. You can see where you're going, see where you're headed, and you can watch out for steps and holes and puddles and on the ground. You can watch out for that or animal poo-poo and other things that were in the street during those times. Lamps guide you. And he says to preserve you. And now he turns the focus once again towards this idea of this relationship. To preserve you from the evil woman, from the smooth tongue of the adulteress. Do not desire her beauty in your heart, and do not let her capture you with her eyelashes. For the price of a prostitute is only a loaf of bread, but a married woman hunts down a precious life. Can a man carry fire next to his chest and his clothes not be burned? Or can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be scorched? So he who goes in to his neighbor's wife, none who touches her will go unpunished. You see the connection here? So he brings, and the big thing here is in verse 26. So it's like, here he's like, this is how much this costs, all right? It's only a loaf of bread for prostitution, but a married woman hunts down a precious life. So the comparison is, here you've only given up a loaf of bread. If you decide to participate this. But if you have decided to embark on the woman in a marriage, that is your life again, that is your life. You are asking and begging for death. It just blows. See, he says, people, look at verse 30. People do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy his appetite when he is hungry. We all understand if someone is hungry and they need to eat, they stole, and we're like, that stinks. You still shouldn't have stole, but we can empathize and connect with that a little bit. But if he is caught, look at the punishment that still happens. But if he is caught, he still has to pay. Okay, yes, we can empathize and connect with the thief who is hungry. There is still a punishment that has to happen. It says he will give all the goods of his house. But look at verse 32. He who commits adultery lacks sense. He who does it destroys himself. Yeah, the guy who is caught, all he did was lose his house. The person who commits adultery loses his life. You guys see the comparison here that happens? He's just trying to bring this out to him. He said, don't make this mistake. Your life is at stake. And so the second lie is this one. This will not burn me. See, Tom and I yesterday we got to grill and we pretty much grilled hamburgers. And we all didn't have a lighter. And so here we are trying to fiddle around and try to light this thing. And so we got a paper plate and we're playing around with lighter fluid. And by the end, after all, get this thing started, the smoke itself, we reeked afterwards. I pretty much stood in the smoke the entire time. You see, it'd be silly for me to expect, yes, I'm going to help Tom here. I'm going to help him grill. I'm going to stand in the smoke. It'd be really ridiculous if I'm like, I'm not going to smell like smoke after. That's how silly it is with adultery. You're carrying fire. You're going to get burned. No, I'm different. No, you're not. You're going to get burned. Oh no, I'm different. This is different. Nope, it's not. Don't expect anything different. You are going to get burned. And that's the second lie that we buy into, is that this is different. No, it's not. You will get burned. You will get burned. Now let's keep going. Now we're going to leap one more time into chapter 7 here. Chapter 7 here, verses 1 through 11. So here in this set, I wanted to, I don't know how much time we got. I think we got enough time to read it. Okay. So now he keeps going here. He says, "My son, keep my words and treasure up my commandments with you. Keep my commandments and live. Keep my teaching as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call insight your intimate friend. To keep you from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words." As in literally bind and make wisdom. And we've already talked about wisdom before, but make wisdom and keep her as close to you like your closest sister, your best friend. That is the woman you need to be keeping close to you. That of wisdom. That's who you need to keep, because she will keep you from the forbidden woman. And so in verse 6, he starts describing here. It's almost like a scene where he's up in his palace and he's looking out on what is going on. And he says, "For at the window of my house I have looked out through my lattice, and I have seen among the simple, I have perceived among the youths a young man lacking sense. Passing along the street near her corner, taking the road to her house in the twilight, in the evening, at the time of night and darkness." People are supposed to be in bed at this time, but it's not what he sees. And now he starts going into this explanation of what plays out, and this is where we're going to get the last of the lies. And he says, "And behold, the woman meets him, dressed as a prostitute, wily of heart. She is loud and wayward, her feet do not stay at home. Now in the streets, now in the market, and at every corner, she lies in wait." And we're going to keep going here, but this reveals what I saw as the third lie here. You can trust that individual. It's a fascinating idea, but if you, I don't know how many people have been blackmailed and tricked and, and I'm like, and it was all the rage here a few years ago in politics. And, you can't even trust contracts. You just can't trust. See, if you are committing sin with another person, you cannot rest on that person to not sin and expose the sin that was there. There is no trust, and there cannot be. And it says here, he says, dressed as a prostitute, so she has decided to change her dress, which means she's already now changing something about herself. She's wily of heart, so it's like sneaky. You can't quite read what's going on. You have an idea, but you don't actually know what's going on the inside. You only see what's on the outside. And then in verse 12, you get this idea that they're actually lying in wait to pounce. It's almost like a lion. And it's like, here you are, you're about to, this naive individual is walking around, and there is somebody else waiting to pounce and do it. You cannot trust that person. You cannot depend on that person. You cannot trust them because they're wily, they're secretive, there's something different. And that's what happens also in these relationships, is they think they can trust each other and they're not going to get burned, but it's going to come out. When push comes to shove, things are exposed and the other person will turn because they don't really have your best interest at heart. They've always had their own. Let's keep going here. says this lady seizes him and kisses him, and with bold face, she says to him. And so we're going to go there. So this idea, this seizing, this grabbing, this, you believe that this is real passion. Because people get caught up in it. This is real. This is what I've been missing. This is important. But we gotta, put it on the backdrop of everything else that we've seen so far. This isn't real passion. This is just real dangerous. This is dangerous. We think this is what it's supposed to be like and real, and we get caught up in it. But look what verse 14. Now, verse 14, man, it throws me off, and it threw off a lot of commentators because it is I don't think we're going to have the exact answer of what goes on here next, but she says, I had to offer sacrifices, and today I have paid my vows. So we have been participating in watching this thing play out, this sinful activity play out, and suddenly there's this whole religious connotation that's been added to it. Like, what does that have to do with what's going on? You offer sacrifices. Yay? We don't really know. And there was some idea, and so just a couple of things just to sort of put out there, and we're not going to die on any of those. But one of those believes that this individual, because her husband is away, that she is actually traveling from another country. And so this is a pagan woman who goes in and uses religion as a reason, like, well, in order to offer these sacrifices, I need a second person, and my husband is not here, and I just happened to find you. So this is religious in nature. You're helping me out, using the guise of helpfulness. And the guy's like, oh yeah, I can help. Do. Trap. Okay, so it's possible it means that. I think that's where I sort of lean towards, I guess, but I can't really, say it. I don't really know. And so I thought, and this is another way. So this is how I'm shaping this one, okay? Your religion cannot justify this evil deed. You can't claim, oops, it was an accident. Things just got out of control. Well, you already know earlier, no, nothing's out of control here. But we can't use this idea of vowing and sacrifices to justify sin. You can't use an oops as well, now I'm not held liable for my actions. Oopsies don't cover lies. Okay? Can we all agree there? Oopsies are not oopsies. Oopsies are no, you shouldn't have done it, okay? Oopsies don't count. And so religion or this idea of helping, it can't justify and make what happens okay. All right, look at let's look at the next one. He says, so now I have come out to meet you, to seek you eagerly, and I have found you. Another this next one. He or she truly desires you as a person, as an individual, as someone worth value. Because we go through the other one, she's been lying in wait. She's ready to pounce, all this stuff. And so we buy into this lie that they really want you as a person. But actually, if you boil down sin and what it is, sin is selfishly motivated. If they really valued you and valued who you are, they would have respected the fact that you have decided to get married to another individual. And they will respect that vow, and they will respect who you are as a person, and instead of trying to get you to violate that. And also, if they wouldn't try to get to violate that, because we see the danger of what it is. And so if they really cared about you as an individual, they wouldn't be trying to lead you on to death. Loving people don't lead people to the slaughter. We agree on that? They don't do it. They don't lead people down a path of destruction. That is not what love is. And that's what partaking of this does. It leads you down to destruction. Now that verses 16 through 18, She says, I've spread my couch with coverings, colored linens from Egyptian linen. Whew. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. That would be the worst in my mind. Cinnamon is, it's like cinnamon gum. That is disgusting, okay? So, but come, let us take our fill of love till the morning. And I thought this was what's happening now will satisfy you. Look, decorated, it's nice, it's perfect, everything is great. No, all this does is give you a taste. It does not satisfy you. And we'll explain that a little bit more, but that is important to know. What's happening now will not meet that need that you think you have. And then a repeat of verses 19 through 20. For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He has took a bag of money with him at full moon. And he will come home. No one will find out. Is the last lie here. It's going to happen. It's going to be exposed. So these are just some lies here that we see. Now, I'd like you to, we're going to take a step back from this, just a tad, okay? We're still going to be talking about it, but if you guys will turn just a few chapters to Proverbs chapter 27. I was really trying to think about how to go about just applying this or just getting us to think a little bit more about it. And so I have found in my own life in regards to any sin, anything. When we sin, it's usually out of a sense that we believe this action will satisfy what I feel right now. Even in something as, we can do lying. Okay, when we lie, we have a need where we feel like we have to protect ourselves. And so we feel like lying is going to satisfy that desire. But all it does is get us caught in a web and everything else, and it comes crashing down. Losing your temper. We feel like raising our voice and yelling at another individual will get the other individual to change their mind and agree with you. Thus satisfying your need of being in control. Everything we do has this discontentment that rises out of it. And we feel like we're the only one who can meet that contentment, and so we sin in any number of situations. Just something to think about. And so look at Proverbs chapter 27. Now, I looked at all these verses, and this is one that I accidentally stumbled on, and it's because of our sermon that we had about friendship here a few weeks ago. This was in the middle of that. So look at Proverbs 27. It says, one who is full loathes honey, but to one who is hungry, everything bitter is sweet. Find a vegetable that you really don't like to eat, okay? All of us could pretty much agree, if I had not eaten for a week, I would eat that vegetable, right? If we were all hungry, you're ready to scarf down anything, right? I'm not a big fan of olives. The black olives, I'll eat them. I think they ruin the taste of whatever they're on. They do, they're disgusting. And if you guys do think they're amazing, forget you, you're all wrong. But even as a kid, I was not a big fan of them. And my parents, I don't know why they ordered this. They would order one of those Supreme pizzas, and it had olives on it. You guys are all anyways. So here I am, and I've just finished soccer practice. I haven't eaten in a whole 2 hours. I was starving, and as those who have been teenage boys know, you have to eat a full meal every 2 to 3 hours, or you're gonna die. So I'm finishing practice. My parents have the pizza. I didn't wait. I could eat it. I could manage to consume that pizza because I was that hungry. But if I was already full, would I eat that piece of pizza? No way. It was disgusting. Now I'll eat it because now I have sophisticated taste. But back then I wasn't as sophisticated. So, but you guys get it. When you're starving, you will just consume everything. And so he says, the one who is full loathes honey. You don't need anything else. You're like, oh my goodness, I've had too much cake. You want a spoonful of honey? No. I've had enough. It's easier to resist the honey, isn't it? When you're already satisfied. Like a bird that strays from its nest is a man who strays from his home. And so this idea is right after this idea of satisfaction. And this can be applied to a lot of different things, but I'm going to grab this. I'm going to apply it specifically to this imagery that we've already created of this adulterous relationship and how it tastes as sweet as honey, but it's as bitter as wormwood. So there's actually a trap here. So there's this idea of honey. Now, some people have used this idea and said, men and or women who are married, make yourself always available in order to satisfy the needs of your husband. Okay. But that places, at its core, men, the only person who can satisfy you is your wife. But let me tell you, the depth of sin in a man's heart, and this is also applied to women, I'm specifically talking to men. Your wife, no matter how awesome she is, cannot meet that depth of despair in your heart. And if we allow ourselves, the men, you're always going to want more. No matter how perfect your wife is. It is not up to your wife to satisfy your needs. And this is where everyone's going to lose their minds. The only person that can satisfy your heart and your desires is the person of Jesus Christ. Men and women, do not fall into the lie where it is your wife's job to satisfy your heart and to satisfy what you want, because that is a recipe for disaster. Because sometimes, you know what? She's human too. And sometimes, ladies, your man, your husband, no matter how awesome he is, and we're pretty cool, we're going to let you down. You can't depend on that person. Now, that doesn't mean you can't enjoy each other and be a part of it, but you cannot base your contentment on your spouse because it'll let you down. Your contentment must be met by something deeper, and that is the grace of Jesus Christ. And so, but here's another thing. Not all of us are married. Uh-oh. Whoop, you're doomed. Oh, man. I was just thinking, I can't imagine how difficult it would be for young men and women who were involved in a marriage relationship, a healthy marriage relationship, and their spouse has somehow died, or their spouse has been deployed. I mean, that is difficult. Their spouse cannot meet your needs. They're in another country. How does it work for them? That's why I say it applies. It's not up to them to meet the sole desire and contentment of your heart. That has to be Jesus Christ. And those who are single and are not yet married, I don't miss the teen years at all. Some people are like, high school was the best years of my life. Oh boy, get me out of there. So I was ready. But if you think, and I want to communicate this to parents who have or will have teenage boys, oh please Start speaking to your kids now. For the love of all good things, don't trust and don't depend on your kids' public school education or their friends or the internet to train. Because I think we're seeing what happens when we do let that happen. Parents, it's up to you to start that conversation now. When they're not even one yet. Okay? Just start. Start training now. Invest. And how does that look like? I don't know yet. I'm a dad of 3 daughters. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay? But you just got to buy into it. You got to, just like this Solomon tried doing, invest, be open, speak, start early. Just be blunt. It might be really awkward. You might have blown it. Do it anyway. Please. Because that is hard. I feel sorry for teenage boys. I'm speaking from that. My goodness. Yeah. Please. Teach them, invest, begin to communicate. No matter what you're thinking right now, it's not going to satisfy you. It's not. It's going to trap you. And so what I'm going to do as we close is I want to challenge you to go back through these commands that Solomon used, okay? So remember, he was in, Proverbs chapter 5, the second half of Proverbs chapter 6, and Proverbs chapter 7. And just look at it. So that's sort of like your homework. I know we don't have a community group this week, but that's your homework. Watch how he commands, key, treasure, things like that, just so your own self you can study. And so now as we go back, if you have closed your Bibles, it is not time yet, because I want you to turn all the way ahead of Philippians chapter 4. You guys thought I was done. I'm almost done. I'm going to drive this home just a little bit more from another perspective if you're talking about satisfaction here. So Philippians chapter 4. We talk about these verses. They're always used when we're struggling financially. It's like the go-to verses, okay? And I think that's a shame that that's the only reason we go to these verses. So look at verse 10, and this is Paul writing to the Philippian church. He says, I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. It says, verse 11, now that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. That's not just financial. In whatever situation I find myself in, I'm supposed to be content at heart. Paul was a single man going around. We think our society is bad now. Just read up on the history of Corinth for a little bit. We got nothing on these people. He says, I know how to abound. Or so I have learned to, I know how to be brought low. I know how to abound in any and every situation. I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger and abundance and need. He says, I can do all things through him who strengthened me. This is not about I can lift weights and score a touchdown for the NFL. Yes, Jesus' power. No, this is about meeting the discontentment of your heart. That happens when you are financially poor, when you are financially rich, when you are hungry, when you have a lot, when you are starving for sexual something or another's, or you have plenty. There's only one person that can meet that, and that is Jesus Christ. And so if you struggle with this sin, it's not your spouse's fault. It's not life's fault. It is the discontentment and the hunger in your heart. And the only one who can meet it is Jesus Christ. And you have to just be honest. And you say, Lord, I can't meet this need. I cannot. God, help me to be content right now in what is going on in my heart. Help me to be content and rest that God, that your grace is good enough that I have exactly what I need right now. Help shape my mind towards that. Because then you will be, as it says in Proverbs, one who is full loathes honey. You will be full in the grace of Jesus Christ, and you will loathe the sweet-talking lies of the honey, and you won't get caught in a trap.